Happy New Year. I'm so excited to be back with you. I've missed you all so much. I am not at home. I'm not at school. I'm in my mom and dad's basement. Because of COVID, they have us working from home for the next couple of weeks. And Logan has his remote learning. So I'm going to be coming to my mom and dad's every day and teaching from their basement. So in the process right now, my mom's putting away her Christmas decorations, the air hockey table, and this is where I am. So I wanted to get started with our next read aloud. Miss Dowling read for you The One and Only Ivan. Truly an absolutely incredible story. I'm so glad you had the opportunity to read it. But it's time to kind of like hop into something a little fun and silly. So I'm going to read to you a pretty short book. We'll get through it really quickly. And it's called Scream Team, The Werewolf at Home Plate. So when I look at the title, I can already see that this is going to be something about baseball, because when you are playing a sport that includes home plate, it's the baseball home plate where the batter and the catcher is. You can see that the catcher has a baseball mitt on, and there's also a baseball. So let's get started. Chapter 1. Dude, you look like a poodle. Carl's paws had never moved so fast. As he raced to the outfield, 10 other werewolves snapped at his tail. No way you'll get that ball, one growled. Just watch me, Carl thought, sprinting faster. I'm like the wind. Not gonna happen, shouted another werewolf. It was Alphonse, a tough cub from Carl's neighborhood. I'm gonna call him Al. Okay, Alphonse is gonna be called Al. Carl stuck out his baseball glove. Nothing anyone could say would stop him from making this catch. Nothing. Just then, Al said, Dude, you look like a poodle. That was me. That did the trick. Woof. Carl's glove jerked the wrong way. As the ball whizzed past, he turned to grab it and lost his balance. He spun around like a lawn sprinkler. All while he whirled, Carl had to admit his patchy coat did look like a poodle's. His mom said his fur would even out as he got older, but for now, he still looked like a fancy show dog, not the biggest, best night of his life. Finally, Carl stopped spinning. He slammed snout first into the turf. The other werewolves on the field howled. Normally, Carl would laugh too, but Monster League tryouts were way too important to him. He wanted to be a junior club werewolf more than anything. On the sidelines, Coach Powers blew his whistle and marked his clipboard. That's an effing fielding, Carl, he said. Carl hopped up and trotted over. Coach, it's not my fault that... Holding up a paw, Coach interrupted. You know my motto, Carl. Don't make excuses on the diamond. That's the baseball diamond, the field that you play baseball on. Just do good plays. Carl's shoulders slumped. Coach nodded. You've got one more chance left, he said. They're still hitting. Stay focused. In each of the 6 events at tryouts, Coach Powers gave them a grade. Cubs with at least a C average made the junior cub werewolves. Cubs who didn't make the cut, well, Carl didn't even want to think about that. Things aren't looking good for you, Poodle, Al said. He pushed past Carl as they headed toward home plate. Not a problem, Carl fired back. He had been practicing hitting for months with his dad. As Carl waited on deck, he glanced around the stadium. He recognized kids from school trying out for different teams. A couple zombies from his homeroom tossed a head around and left field. A Bigfoot from science class had just slid into first base and was now eating it. And over there, something danced in the corner of Carl's eye. What was it? He turned his body, but whatever the thing was, turned with him. It darted around out of sight. Carl sneered and chased it. He ran around and around in a small circle. Finally, Carl gave up, exhausted. He couldn't catch the pesky thing. He looked up, sweating and panting. Everyone was staring at him. That thing you're chasing? Al said. It's called your tail. He tossed the bat to Carl. And it's your turn to bat. Carl blushed. He was embarrassed. Chasing his own tail was one of the 2 things he did when he was freaked out. As Carl stepped into the batter's box, he knew this was his last chance. I'll get an A+ on my swing, he told himself, and I'll make up for all of the other scores. Coach pitched the ball. Carl swung as hard as he could. Yes! The bat connected with the ball with a whack and the tiniest squeak. The ball sailed out toward right field. Carl ran. He sprinted to first and then past it. He kept running toward the outfield. Carl! Coach shouted. Stop! Carl's chasing the ball. He's not running the bases like he's supposed to. Carl didn't listen. He raced over to the ball, sank his teeth into it, and ran it back to the pitcher's mound. It's like he was playing fetch like a dog. He dropped the ball at Coach's feet, wagging his tail. Coach picked up the ball and touched Carl. You're out, he said. Carl's the only monster I know who can get himself out, Al called from home plate. The other werewolves howled again. Carl snapped out of it. Fetching a squeaky ball was the second thing he did when he was nervous. 10 minutes later, Coach Powers and the other coaches taped up the lists of monsters that had made the different teams. Carl ran his paw down the werewolf list. His heart was pounding. Move over, Poodle, so the rest of us can see, Al complained. Hold on, Carl said, starting to panic. He read the list of 15 names again and again. His name wasn't there. He wasn't a JC werewolf. He felt sick. Maybe next year, Carl, Coach Powers said, patting him on the shoulder. Now take a seat over there. I need to talk to the team about our first game. I'll just wait outside for my dad to pick me up, Carl tried to say, but he was so choked up that no words came out. Carl padded toward the door with his tail tucked between his legs. He felt like all the monsters were watching him. This can't be the end, he thought. I have to find a way to be a JC werewolf. Chapter 2. Alley of Losers. When Carl rushed outside, storm clouds were swirling overhead. But Carl didn't care if he got drenched or smelled like a wet dog. Nothing could make him go back into the stadium. Through the doors, he heard the Ghosts' coach shout, "Congratulations! You've made the team! You're going to have the most fun of all your afterlives!" Carl didn't want to hear anymore. He ducked around the corner into the alley. Fumes from an open sewer grate filled the air. That usually smells like the rotten eggs, like when you walk downtown and you get that waft from the sewers. It doesn't really smell very good. And a street light had blown out. It was the perfect dark and smelly spot to do something. But because he's a werewolf, he likes dark and smelly spots. How was Carl going to break the news to his dad? They planned to go for lice cream to celebrate Carl making the team. But now what? Carl slumped miserably against the dumpster. "Are you okay?" a voice asked, except it sounded like "Ashishaku." Surprised, Carl jerked back. A plump vampire kid stepped out of the shadows. His huge fangs made him look like a walrus, and they dripped with drool. Sure, I'm okay," Carl said. "By the way, I just ate garlic, or curry, or shellfish, or whatever you're allergic to," because Carl doesn't want to get eaten by the vampire. The vampire laughed. Good thing Carl didn't care about getting wet, because spit sprayed out between the kid's fangs when he opened his mouth and laughed. That's disgusting. "No, I'm not hungry," the vampire said. What am I saying? I'm always hungry. But the tryouts made me lose my appetite." I wonder if he tried out for baseball too. I didn't make the vampire team. And I'm babbling. He stuck out a chubby hand to shake Carl's paw. Hey, I'm Dennis. Are you sure you're all right? Not really, Carl sighed. I'm Carl. I didn't make my team either. Dennis said. I didn't know poodles had their own team. Carl growled. I'm not a poodle. Poof. Dennis turned into a bat and fell to the ground with a plop. His little wings flapped but couldn't lift his weight. He flopped around, squealing through his giant fangs. A second later, he popped back into a kid. Sorry, Carl said. He stepped toward Dennis, his foot coming down on the rock. I didn't mean to scare you. Woof! The rock said. What in the earth is going on here? This vampire can turn into a bat and a rock? Carl glanced down. The rock was a zombie girl's head. Ooh. What's up? She asked with a smile. Or was it a frown? Sure couldn't tell because her head was upside down. Carl leaped off. Why didn't you say something sooner? Not easy with a werewolf's paw up your nose, the zombie said. Patsy's my name. Going to pieces is my game. Can you give me a hand? Carl rolled her head right side up. Patsy chuckled. No, really. Give me my hand. Both, actually. My pal went to find some body parts, but he's been gone a while. She turned her mouth to the side and shouted, Maxwell! A mummy kid stumbled around the corner into the alley. He was swimming in layers of cloth strips. Here I am, he said. Don't lose your head, Patsy. He waved her hand in front of his face like a fan. Sweat stained his oversized wrappings. You're the best, Maxwell, Patsy said. I know, he said. And it sounded like he meant it. Even if I don't make the mummies, or I didn't make the mummies. All these kids didn't make the teams that they tried out for. Maxwell put the hand down to her mouth. Patsy used her fingers to whistle. Hearing the call, her headless body popped up in the dumpster and climbed out. The body picked up her head and placed it on her neck with a little twist. Then she screwed her hand back in place. Well, it's been fun hanging out with you other losers, Patsy said, but I've got to go back to the grave. Hang on, Carl said. I'm not a loser. Patsy stopped. Sorry, she said. I didn't mean just you. None of us made our teams. I'm going to change that, Carl said. I'm going to show everybody that I should be a JC werewolf. But they didn't want you on their team, Dennis said. Carl looked at the other monsters and got an idea. What do you think his idea is? I actually thought of it a little bit ago when all these little kids started combining and fighting each other and none of them had made their own team. That's right. We can start our own team, Carl said. Maxwell said. Very funny. We're the leftovers. And besides, there's never been a team made up of different kinds of monsters. It wouldn't have to be for long, Carl said, excited about the idea. If we can win, everyone will see how good we are. They'll want us back. Then we can play with our real teams. Dennis counted out loud and said, There's only 4 of us. We don't have enough players. I would join. Mike, a swamp thing from Carl's school, crawled up out of the open sewer. He must have been hiding down there. Before Carl could say anything, Beck, a Bigfoot, climbed down from a nearby fire escape. Me too, Beck said. That's 2 more right there, Carl said. We can get more monsters who are cut from their teams to sign up. Carl stuck out a paw. Come on, who's in? Patsy shrugged and put her decayed hand on top of his paw. Then, one by one, the others placed 5 pale fingers, a slimy tail, a sweaty bandaged hand, and a fist of sharp claws in. And they stood in a circle. Carl bounced his paw up and down and said, 3 cheers for the... Hold on, our team needs a name. Just then, the storm finally broke. Lightning struck a lamppost on the street. The blinding bright flash made Dennis scream and turn into a bat. Good idea, Dennis, Carl said, grinning. We'll be the Scream Team.